So I got several friends of mine asking for some English content because most of my content is in Portuguese. So let me try. So it's going to be a first attempt. Hopefully that adds a little bit of value to you and you can share your friends or family. So I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts about several different topics. So economics, not too much of politics, but more about like a macro economical context and technology and things that I really like. So one of the things that I would like to talk about today is about something that is not really mentioned in the media. Of course, we are in completely uncertain times. It's unprecedented what is happening right now. But one of the certain parts that I can tell you for sure is that most of us, we are spoiled in how capitalism works on the availability of the products that we have. So if you go to grocery store, there are so many options over there. If you have so many options of cars, consumer electronics, maybe you're watching this from an iPhone, from an Android, or this is a very complex equipment that requires so many different suppliers and different raw materials to make that work. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So from 30 years ago, a little bit more than that, but the last 30 years, it was very strong in what we call a supply chain, which is the whole structure behind it. So most people, they take it for granted that if you go to a store or buy something on Amazon, what is happening behind the scenes to make that happen, to make that delivery happen, to make your product be in your hands in the first place. And one of the things that you might have learned while at school was the term just in time, and that is exactly what I'm going to talk about today. Because if you have a car, for example, which is one of the most typical examples for that, is when you have a car made of hundreds of different components, but the goal here is to make that as efficient as possible, as cheap as possible, as affordable as possible, of course, to make sure that is in the most efficient way. And most of car companies, they relied on a very low inventory system where you could not have anything over 3 days without a constant delivery. So if you have a car made in Japan, for example, you're in a Honda or a Toyota or whatever, they rely on parts that are coming from over 40 countries around the world, or even more than that, or a plane, for example, on Boeing or Airbus, they rely on an even more complex structure. And what is happening right now is, of course, with all this chaos, with that virus that we're not allowed to mention the name, everything has been disrupted and most people don't even know it. So your life has already changed and you're not even noticing it. Maybe people are going to notice a couple of months from now that something is not working very well. And of course, you may have noticed a lot of stuff already, but we didn't even scratch the surface on what is going to change from now on. And I strongly believe, so I'm going to share a little bit of my opinion, some things that are happening, and a little bit of my opinion on that. So what you see of 30 years ago was the what we call the globalization, and some people may know or may not know a little bit what it is. There are some stereotypes, but I'm going to be talking more about the supply chain part of the globalization. And we've seen a lot of a movement where our capacity or production capacity in several countries, mostly the US, but you've seen that in Brazil as well, in Europe as well, who were originally production powerhouses, slowly shifting these jobs to China, not only because pricing, or everybody talks about the sweatshops and everything, but it's way more complex than that. And China was intentionally doing that to slowly learn how to produce with their own technology. But at the end of the day, they actually got it done in a masterful way for them. And they created a very interdependent system where the whole world would produce. So if you go to a store, everything is like made in China, or sometimes they they hide it, saying like it's made in PRC, which is exactly People's Republic of China. So you don't know, because most people think that a made in China product is something that is not great quality. And that changed for a while ago. Of course, you have a lot of crappy products, but that's not what they are capable of doing right now. So my point is, for 30 years until now, the technology was shifted from all countries to China. And everybody was happy about it because they were cheap products. It was very efficient. You could hire tens of thousands of people within days, which is why mostly companies like Apple and Samsung would use other companies like Foxconn in China to make sure they could rely on their supply chains to make sure it works. Of course, you have a huge logistics system going on, and people like Tim Cook, for example, were specialists on that matter. You have dozens of planes shipping iPhones to Brazil or to America, to all over the world. But that is a very sensitive system, and now we're finally seeing the Achilles heel of such a system, and everybody thinks, okay, maybe that's going to shift. I think it's going to shift radically. So you see a lot of countries actually pulling out their factories out of China. That movement has already begun for 10 years. Most people think that everybody has a factory in China because it's the cheapest, is the most affordable one, is the most efficient one. But that wasn't necessarily the truth, because wages in China were already increasing at a pace of 8% per year. And some people were migrating to other countries like Vietnam or like Laos, like Taiwan and so forth. But the main reason for them right now is a completely different story. It's not about the economy anymore. It's not about cost effectiveness anymore. It's about a protection. It's about, hey, maybe this whole crisis that is happening right now, I don't know if you can notice that, but if we have, and I strongly believe we're going to have a complete disruption of the global supply chains, and when it comes not only to electronics, which is not like the most important part, but food. And if you think of a supermarket, they are using exactly the same system, the just-in-time system for that. So if you go to specific supermarkets, they actually depend on local distributors, and everybody delivers every single day new inventory. That's why when you go to a grocery store, there's milk, there's fruit, there's meat, there's chicken or whatever you need. But the thing is, what if that gets disrupted? What if that completely stops? And we're starting to see that happen. So we were so spoiled and going to a grocery store and having a kiwi from New Zealand, for example, or having bananas from Costa Rica, and having so many out of season fruits available to us in a country where we don't grow that at all. So I believe that's going to shift a lot. So that is already being disrupted. So if you see here, I'm in Germany in this very moment, and you see more and more local products because grocery stores are starting to understand that they're not going to have that product anymore. So we are having a complete disruption of the just-in-time supply chain system. If you see a lot of ports in China, in the US, they have containers and containers piled up, and shipments via the sea are the most effective ones. So if you've been to a port, you're gonna see like these huge ships with over 4,500 containers of 20-foot and 40-foot containers, where you see a lot of stuff being transported, and most of them don't have any cargo to ship. Most of them are not effective anymore. Most of them are completely closed forcibly. So, and this has disrupted a lot of the systems to deliver products for post offices, and we are just getting started. That's my feeling, that we're gonna see more and more the need of a local production. I believe we're going to see more and more countries or companies pulling off their production their production centers from China and doing that in America, in Germany. For example, here in Germany is a great example of that, of how this supply chain system has actually harmed the German industry. So here it's considered to be the powerhouse of Europe, the locomotive of Europe in terms of GDP, in terms of industry. You have Mercedes, you have Audi, you have BMW, and so on, machinery, Siemens, and other companies that are based here. But Germany has already been living in a crisis for a long time and not be able to create to be a competitive market, an industry anymore. They were struggling already for several years. And this crisis that is happening right now, it's just the last nail in the coffin. And not only Germany, but so many other countries. Japan is in this exact same thing. So everybody's starting to think, hey, something is wrong. We need to change our dependence on the Chinese supply chains and not having them be the factory of the world anymore. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about. There's a lot of stuff that we still have to see unfold in the short term, mid-term, and long term, of course. But I strongly believe that we're never going to see a system like it was before ever again. I think we're going to reshift our thinking about how to do the proper way, how to create maybe a more local just-in-time, if that's still going to exist in the future, but some kind of more efficient way and more sustainable way to get all the products going on, to get all the products moving. So this is my personal opinion on that. Of course, you can leave a comment about that. There's so many things that we can talk about, but I believe most people have no clue that we're living. I hate to use that term, but that's the first time in my life that I think it's really appropriate to use a paradigm shift, where you see that the goods that you might have right now in your home or in your pocket or whatever, accessible to you, it's going to change a lot. Where it's going to be produced, how it's going to be produced, how it's going to be delivered, and how to think to create more safety, more resources security for the future generations. So yeah, leave a comment if you agree, if you disagree. So let's discuss about that. I'm going to be talking a lot more about other stuff that is going on right now. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.